I never planned to keep my success a secret. But after 8 years of watching my family mock my career choices while living in my private penthouse overlooking Boston Harbor, I had grown accustomed to the irony of it all. My name is Talia Mercer, though the business world knows me only as the mysterious founder of Aura AI. But to my family, I'm just their disappointing middle child. The one who wastes her time with freelance tech consulting instead of joining the family investment fund. Have you ever felt like the invisible one in your own family? No matter how hard you tried, let me know your story down in the comments. It all started 8 years ago. I was 24, fresh out of MIT, and I still naively believed I could earn their approval. I remember standing in my father's mahogany-paneled study. The air always smelled like old leather and entitlement. My father, David Mercer, sat behind his massive desk. The patriarch of Mercer Capital. My sister Emily and my brother Joshua, already secure in their finance roles, stood by the fireplace, smirking. I had spent 6 months pouring my entire soul into a business plan, a detailed, 70-page document for a biotech AI platform. I called it Aura. I wasn't just pitching an idea, I was pitching my future. I was practically begging them to finally see me. When I finished my presentation, there was just this heavy, condescending silence. Joshua laughed first. Talia, seriously, biotech AI, just stick to fixing our laptops. It's safer. Emily sighed, looking bored as she checked her phone. It's just not realistic. Talia, there's no clear exit strategy in the first 3 years. It's messy. But it was my father's reaction that truly broke me. He didn't just say no. He picked up his heavy, gold-nibbed fountain pen, the one he used to sign million-dollar deals, and he wrote directly on the cover of my plan. 4 words, scrawled in angry black ink, not a viable path. He pushed it back across the desk. A quiet act of dismissal. This isn't real business. Talia, this is a fantasy. Mercer Capital deals in certainty, not in aura. In that moment, staring at the ink bleed into my hard work, I finally understood. It wasn't just about the business. It was about me. I was the black sheep. Every family like mine has one. I was the creative one, the dreamer, and I realized, standing there, that they needed me to be that. They needed me to be the failure, so their safe choices, their predictable paths in old money finance, felt more valid, more superior. My failure was the backdrop for their success. If I actually succeeded, especially in a world they didn't understand, it would prove that their certainty was just a lack of imagination. They weren't just rejecting my plan, they were rejecting the threat to their entire worldview. So I left that study. I took my stained business plan, and I stopped trying to convince them. I just disappeared. I kept my small Leffers cheap apartment in Alston for family visits. I drove the same 10-year-old sedan. I let them pity me at Thanksgiving dinners, listening to their helpful advice about getting a real job. How's that little freelance thing going? Talia, Emily would ask, her voice always dripping with that mock concern. Fine. I'd just say, keeping my eyes down. It pays the bills. It did more than that. While they were mocking my freelance thing, I was secretly building Aura AI from the ground up while they were celebrating their small, predictable wins at Mercer Capital. I was closing my first $100 million funding round. 8 years of silence. 8 years of enduring their pity while my company grew into a $5 billion titan. Changing the face of medicine. And that business plan, the one my father ruined with his pen, I keep it in a frame, not in my fake apartment, but on my real desk. On the top floor of the Aura AI tower, right where I can see it every single day. It's a reminder, not just of where I started, but of why I never, ever looked back. That was the past, locked away. Then, last Tuesday, the past didn't just knock. It tried to break down the door. I was in my real office, the one overlooking the harbor, finalizing a new research grant, when my chief of staff, Christopher, walked in. He had this strange expression on his face, a mix of apology and amusement. Ms. Mercer, he said, always so formal. You need to see this. It just came through the executive recruitment portal. He handed me his tablet. I glanced down, and my coffee cup just stopped, halfway to my mouth. On the screen were two applications, impeccably formatted, filled with the kind of polished arrogance only my family could produce. Applicant Emily Mercer. Position Chief Strategy Officer. Applicant Joshua Mercer. Position Head of Future Ventures. I just stared. The silence in my office was deafening. After 8 years of mocking my fantasy job, here they were. Both of them, applying for six-figure positions at my company. They had no idea. The company name, Aura AI, was public, but I had founded it under a private trust. The media only ever referred to me as the founder. My name wasn't attached to it anywhere they would have looked. Christopher coughed, pulling me back. There's more. Ms. Mercer. This came in 10 minutes ago. He swiped the screen. It was an urgent meeting request. From David Mercer, Senior Partner. Mercer Capital. The subject line read, Urgent Strategic Merger Proposal. A merger? My father, the man who wouldn't give me seed money, was now desperately trying to merge his failing old money fund with my $5 billion fantasy. The humiliation of that day, 8 years ago. The sting of his red ink. It all came rushing back. But this time, it wasn't followed by pain. It was followed by a cold, quiet clarity. This was the breaking point. 8 years of hiding. 8 years of silence. It was all over. I looked at that stained business plan on my desk. Not a viable path. Christopher, I said, my voice perfectly level. Schedule the interviews for Emily and Joshua. Tomorrow morning, 10 a.m., and put them in conference room 10B. Christopher paused. 10B. Ma'am, that's the small internal review room. The one with no windows? Exactly. Have Sarah and Marcus handle the interviews. Our VPs. I want their full technical assessment. And the merger proposal, accept it. Same day. 2 p.m. Put my father in the main boardroom. The one overlooking the harbor. Christopher almost smiled. May I ask? You may. I said, standing up and looking out at the city I now owned a piece of. I want them all in this building at the same time. The trap was set. After 8 years of being their ghost, it was finally time for them to see me. I watched them on my private security feed. It was like a zoologist observing a species in an unfamiliar habitat. Conference room 10B wasn't just small, it was designed to be claustrophobic. No windows, bad lighting, a formica table. The opposite of the privilege they were used to. Emily walked in first, and I saw her nose wrinkle in disdain. She was wearing a suit that probably cost $10,000, and she looked offended by the very air in the room. Sarah, my VP of Technology, a genuine genius who had built our core AI, was already waiting. Emily sat down. All boardroom arrogance. Emily Mercer, she said, her voice sharp. Let's get this started. I've got a hard stop at 11. Sarah just smiled. I come. Lethal smile. Of course. Let's dive right in. I see your background is in traditional asset management. I've managed portfolios worth over 9 figures. Emily snapped, as if that was the answer to everything. Impressive, Sarah said, her voice like silk. So, could you describe how you would model the financial integration of a non-linear generative AI platform specializing in biotech R&D? The silence was beautiful. I watched Emily's face go through 3 distinct phases. First, confusion. Second, offense that she was being asked a real question. Third, panic. She tried to bluff. The key isn't the tech. It's the bottom line. The profit and loss. The exit strategy. She was just throwing out words. She had no idea. Sarah just leaned forward. But how would you value the intellectual property? Ms. Mercer, the platform itself, that's what I would hire analysts for. Emily stammered. her confidence shattering like, cheap glass? My job is the strategy. I see, Sarah said. And in that moment, I knew Emily was done. She wasn't just unqualified, she was a relic. An hour later, it was Joshua's turn. He swaggered into the same room. If Emily was arrogance, Joshua was pure, unadulterated ego. He sat down, leaned back, and put his hands behind his head, as if he owned the place. Marcus, my head of innovation, started, Mr. Mercer, your resume is interesting. A lot of venture capital. Josh, please, he said. And yeah, I've got the golden touch. Let me be honest. Marcus, I looked at your company. Aura, you guys are playing small. You're missing the Web3 integration, the blockchain synergy, the disruption. I nearly laughed out loud. He was trying to pitch his interviewer, using a word salad of buzzwords from 3 years ago. Marcus, who holds patents that are basically rewriting the future, just nodded. Fascinating. So, tell me, Josh, from an innovation standpoint, what's your strategy for scaling a multimodal AI's neural network in a zero-trust environment without sacrificing processing latency? Joshua didn't even blink. He didn't understand the question, but he wasn't going to admit it. It's all about agility, he said, beaming, as if he'd just said something profound. You leverage the cloud, you pivot, and you stay dynamic. You gotta be a shark. Marcus just wrote something down on his notepad. A shark. Got it. The rest of the interview was painful. He couldn't answer a single technical question. He just kept repeating the words synergy and disruption like they were magic spells. When it was over, I watched them both being escorted to the main lobby. Defeated. Confused. Their privilege had just slammed face first into a wall of actual merit. They hadn't just failed an interview. They had publicly, comprehensively, and beautifully self-destructed. They had proven, in less than 2 hours, that not a viable path wasn't just a criticism. For them, it was a diagnosis. I watched the feed as Christopher calmly informed them that the interview process was complete and that HR would be in touch. Emily's face was pale with rage. This is a joke. We were interviewed by children. Joshua, trying to regain his swagger, chimed in. Yeah, those guys had no idea who they were talking to. We're Mercers. This whole process is insulting. They demanded to speak to the founder. They demanded to know why they were being treated this way. And as I watched them, a profound realization settled over me. It wasn't just anger I felt. It was pity, because the most terrifying part wasn't their arrogance. It was their ignorance. They genuinely believed they were qualified. They had no idea how little they knew. This is what experts call the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's a cognitive bias where people with low ability at a task overestimate their ability. My family's old money success in traditional finance gave them just enough knowledge to feel like experts, making them confidently blind to a new world they couldn't possibly understand. They weren't just dismissive of AI, they were incapable of grasping its value. I finally understood my father. When he wrote, "Not a viable path" 8 years ago, it wasn't just spite. It was a genuine failure of imagination. He couldn't see the path. His entire world was built on a set of rules that my idea rendered obsolete. And that was why Mercer Capital was failing. Not because of a bad market, but because they were cognitively trapped in the past, blinded by the tiny peak of their own knowledge. They weren't just Kyongao, they were irrelevant. And they didn't even know it. The camera showed Emily and Joshua standing in the lobby, refusing to leave. Emily was on her phone, probably leaving my father an irate voicemail about this unprofessional company. They're demanding to see the founder. Christopher's voice came through my earpiece, his tone perfectly neutral. They say they won't leave until the founder addresses them personally. I looked at the clock. 1:50 p.m., 10 minutes until my father's merger pitch. A slow smile spread across my face. Oh, they want to see the founder, I said, standing up and smoothing my skirt. Send them to the main boardroom. Tell them the founder will meet them there. And Mr. Mercer, your father, Christopher asked. He's already waiting there. Let's not keep them in suspense. The walk from my office to the main boardroom is only about 50 yards. But it felt like the longest 8 years of my life. I didn't rush. I walked slowly, methodically, feeling the cool, recycled air on my skin. I wasn't nervous. I was punctual. Through the smoked glass wall, I saw them. Christopher, ever the professional, held the door open for Emily and Joshua. I watched them step inside, and their entire demeanor changed. The main boardroom isn't just a room, it's a statement, a 300-degree view of the Boston skyline. A single, massive slab of polished obsidian for a table, after the cramped misery of room 10B. This was designed to shock, and then they saw him, at the far end of the table, his back to the city, stood our father, David Mercer. He was practicing his merger pitch to an empty room, a look of grim determination on his face. He turned, hearing the door, a fake corporate smile ready. The smile froze when he saw Emily and Joshua. Emily, Josh. His voice was sharp with confusion. What are you doing here? I'm in the middle of a critical meeting prep. Emily, finally in a room she felt she deserved, found her voice. Father, thank God. This place is a disorganized nightmare. They had us interviewed by children? We've been demanding to see the founder. This is unacceptable. Joshua nodded, puffing up. Exactly. We were just telling them, this company needs serious help. Excuse me. The word wasn't loud, but it cut through the room like a scalpel. The main doors at the far end of the room slid open. I walked in. All three of them turned. I saw a cascade of emotions on their faces. Confusion, first. Then, for my father, a wave of profound annoyance and embarrassment. Talia, he snapped, his voice low and furious. What on earth are you doing? I told you never to interrupt my business. This is a high-level meeting. Get out. Emily and Joshua just looked baffled. Talia, what are you doing here? Emily asked. Her tone just disgusted. Are you the IT support here? Get out. Talia. My father repeated, his face turning red. Now, I ignored him. I walked slowly down the length of that obsidian table, my heels clicking. The only sound in the room. I stopped at the head, directly opposite my father. I looked at all three of them, their faces, a portrait of arrogance and confusion. Hello, Father, Emily, Joshua. I said, my voice calm and clear. Thank you for coming. David stepped forward, his patience gone. Talia, I am not playing this game. This is the most important meeting of my life. You are. I know. I interrupted him. The interruption itself, the act of cutting him off, made all three of them flinch. Welcome to Aura AI, I said, letting my eyes meet each of theirs. One by one, I let the silence hang for a beat. I am the founder. The room was utterly silent. I watched my father's mind trying to process the words, trying to fit this new reality into his rigid, old money worldview. He looked at me, then at the stunning view of the harbor, then back at me. You are the founder. Emily was the first to break. She let out a short, hysterical laugh. That's impossible. Talia, this isn't funny. Stop this. Tell them the truth. You're a consultant here. You fix their computers. I am the founder. I repeated. My voice was quiet, but it filled the cavernous room and the board of directors. I gestured to the empty, polished chairs. Well, for today, that's just me. My father's face, which had been red with anger just moments before, turned a waxy, poly-gray. He finally, truly understood he wasn't in a meeting. He was in a trap. Now, I said, pressing a small button on the console in front of me. Let's begin. The 100-inch 8 Kelvin screen behind me, the one David had been admiring when he walked in, flickered to life. It didn't show Aura AI's stock performance. It didn't show our glowing profit margins. It showed a high-resolution scan of a single document, my original, 70-page business plan from 8 years ago. And right on the cover, magnified for everyone to see, was my father's angry, dismissive scrawl. Not a viable path. Joshua made a small, choked sound. Emily looked like she was going to be sick. Right there on the obsidian table. I believe this was your last formal assessment of my work. Father, I said, I kept it. As motivation, David sank into the nearest chair. He didn't even pull it out. He just fell into it. Talia. I had no idea. That's just it. Dad, I said, walking slowly down the length of the table toward him. You had no idea. You, the brilliant head of Mercer Capital, had no idea. You looked at the future, and you couldn't even see it. You called it a fantasy. I turned my gaze to my siblings, who were frozen in their chairs. And you applied for jobs you weren't qualified for, assuming your family name alone would get you through the door. Talia, please, Emily whispered. The arrogance was completely gone, replaced by a raw, pathetic desperation. We need this. Mercer Capital. It's struggling. I finished for her. Oh, I know. I pressed the button on the console again. The screen changed. It now showed a series of complex financial charts and news headlines. You see, Father, I've been following Mercer Capital's portfolio for years. I saw that 8 years ago, right after you dismissed my plan. You made a massive $50 million investment. I let the words hang in the air. You invested in our main competitor, a company called Echelon Dynamics, a company that stuck to your viable path, a company that, as of last week, filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. David's head snapped up, his eyes wide, with a new, dawning horror. Oh, yes, I said. And as of 9 a.m. this morning, Aura AI has officially, and very quietly, completed its acquisition of all of Echelon's primary assets for pennies on the dollar. I watched the final piece click into place for him. His face crumpled. Your $50 million investment is now worthless. Your entire fund is leveraged on that loss. You're not just struggling. Father, you're insolvent. You're ruined. I walked back to the head of the table. You didn't come here today for a strategic merger. David, you came here for a bailout? You came here to beg the founder of Aura AI to save Mercer Capital. I looked at him, at all of them. The three people whose approval I had once craved more than air. The answer is no. I picked up the original, ink-stained business plan from the table, holding it up for them to see one last time. You are not getting a bailout. You, I nodded to Emily and Joshua, are not getting jobs. You all made your viable path. Now you can walk it. Christopher, I said, my voice clear and final. Please show Mr. Tan, Mercer and his associates the way out. Have you ever had to prove your worth to the very people who should have seen it from the start? Share your story in the comments. And if you believe in the power of following your own path, don't forget to like and subscribe.